Our message today is called Making Meaningful Change. So we've been working all year long on this theme, this every path leads home. And the idea behind it is that if we believe what we say we believe here in Centers for Spiritual Living, which is that there's just one consciousness that we might call God, the divine, the intelligence, natural order, and that we are all a part of it because remember we just said there's only one. So if there's only one and we exist, we have to be part of it. Then there's nothing we could do that is off the path. There's just a different path. And all of them are leading to the same place, which is right to the center of the truth of who we really are, which is our connection place with that infinite oneness that we call spirit, or any other name we might pick, Carlos, the good, the beloved one, Herbert. Whatever your favorite one is. I like sweet spirit. I tend to slide back into sweet spirit. So if we're all one in sweet spirit and we're all walking whatever path we're on right now, we don't need to get too terribly stressed out about, is this the right path? Is this the perfect path? Because every path is going to get us there. And our goal is just to get on the path that is truest to our own personal expression, that's going to lead us to the center of ourselves more quickly, more completely, and help keep us on a path that shows who we are in the world. So the first half of our year has been all about deepening into the truth of who we are so that we know what that path might look like. And we're in kind of the trough of the year, right? The June-July section is where the year is taking the slide up into our second part of the year, which is about walking that out in the world. How does that show up in relationship? How does that show up in how we're manifesting what we want? How is that showing up in our goals and dreams, our sense of peace in the world, our way of being positive change? And in this little trough of the middle of the summer, we're making that turn. That how do I go from shifting how I feel about myself and how I understand the world, how do I shift that into showing up differently? And so today's talk is called Making Meaningful Change. And it's all about setting ourselves up to make that shift. It's a 1-2 talk. Next week we have kind of the second half of that talk, which is called What in the World? And it's about our personal worldviews. And by the time we complete that series, I'm willing to bet we're ready to start walking this stuff out more powerfully than we have in the past. Are you with me? Beautiful. So as part of our path conversation, we've been pointing out during most of our talks which personal paths we might be working on with this particular message. So today we're talking about self-acceptance, personal responsibility, and a little bit of spiritual study. Now, as you know, I am not a big believer in spiritual study. No, yeah, you don't believe me? No, yeah. I'm a big proponent of spiritual study, spiritual practice, and really anchoring ourselves in a daily way into how to be the truth that we feel on the inside of ourselves. So here's the thing. We get stuck, don't we? Because here's a hint, I'm not going to say anything in this message that you haven't heard before. There might be a story you haven't heard, but you know what I'm going to say. The thing is, we then promptly forget when they don't do what we think they should do. Those people, you know those people, right? Those people. It doesn't even matter who those people are to you. You've got one, or some, or a political party, or a nation, or a religion, or a way of looking at the world that in your mind, deep down in the part you don't like to look at and don't like to think about, they are those people who, if they just did what I think is right, everything would be much better, right? Oh, my friends, it's so natural. It's the most natural thing in the world to feel that way, and it keeps us stuck. I found this amazing quote in Forbes magazine, of all bizarre places. And this article in Forbes magazine, written by Heather Cherry, who is a business writer, a marketing writer, caused me to think two things. One was, oh my Lord, our message is getting out into the mainstream. How delightful. And 2, I'm going to write a talk about that. And the quote I'm going to pull out is this: if you want to make meaningful change, you must first dive into the inside, taking a look at how your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are linked. Your thoughts affect how you feel and create your reality, and how you think causes your actions. Forbes magazine. Isn't that awesome? I was like, that reads like Ernest Holmes. That reads like something Reverend Karen wrote 3 days ago. I mean, this is amazing. So the heart of this message, I think, is this: changing what's out there, whether it's our actions or how we see what's going on in the world, changing what's out there always starts in here. Always. Always. Yep, that thing too. The yabbit that just rose up in your head, that too. It all starts in here. So, I know that everyone within this room, with the potential exception of the couple of brand new people, and even they look in the message, so I'm willing to say, even this is not new news, that the spiritual truth of all of this. You've read a book, you've watched a show, you've tuned into Oprah on Super Soul Sunday. Something has shown up in your world that led you to show up here, that the idea that there is only one, that there is no need to focus in on sin or judgment or holding grudges, that we can release all of this and not have to carry it ourselves. This is not new. And yet, we get stuck. So let's go through a few practical things that we can do to kind of do the energetic reset when we find that we are in that stuck space. But Reverend Lezli, how am I going to know if I'm in that stuck space? If you are finding yourselves ruminating, the word rumination is my personal bane. It is my nemesis. That thing where you're thinking it through and thinking it through and thinking it through and having imaginary conversations of what you would have said if you'd really been on target when the thing happened, and right? And you win the argument in your head, but somehow the argument never stops, and you're trying to pull weeds, and you're still arguing with that person about all the things they didn't do right? I can see that none of you have had this experience, so just in case there's someone out there that can relate, we will continue this conversation. When you feel that burning feeling, for me it's right here, that feeling of like, ugh, it's just all wrong. It's sensory. It feels like I ate like 4 pounds of Carolina ghost peppers, and it's just the reapers are in there. It's not good. It's not good. If you feel that way, if you find yourself tearing yourself or someone else down again and again and again in your mind, my friend, you're stuck. And we all get stuck. So let's take a moment and just shake off any self-judgment about any stuckness, because it's not like we think, and the goal is that you'll never get stuck. Oh, bless our sweethearts, we're going to get stuck. The trick is, can we unstick ourselves? So the first thing we're going to do to unstick ourselves is, these categories come right out of Heather Cherry's article in Forbes magazine. Mine your mind. Go in there like you're looking for diamonds. Mine your mind, because what's going on is in there. You know how we get on the phone with a friend, or we spend a bunch of energy trying to figure out what's going on? The answer is always right here, top of mind, if we take a moment and go check it out. And there are some questions we can ask ourselves when we're in this stuck space that can help us figure it out. What's on my mind? And why? Ooh, it's the why. It's the why that gets us. What's on my mind and why? How am I feeling about it? Oh, caution, 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 caution. I am strobe lights. Feeling is a very specific thing. And what do we like to do to avoid talking about feelings or thinking about feelings? We like to analyze. How am I feeling? I just think he did it wrong. That's It's not a feeling. How am I feeling? I just really know that it should be different. That's not a feeling either. How am I feeling? How is my body feeling? How are my emotions showing up? How am I feeling? Here's a big one. Are these thoughts helping me? Everybody sort of tilted like 1 degree to the side. And then finally, what are my thoughts and feelings prompting me to do? If we find that our thoughts and feelings are prompting us to do something that keeps us stuck, we need to look at it. If our thoughts and feelings are prompting us to do something that brings resolution, we need to look at that too. How very interesting it is to be a minister or practitioner in this movement, because what we find is people come in to have sessions with us, spiritual guidance sessions, practitioner sessions, and most of my job is this. Are you ready? Tell me more about that. What do you think that means? Tell me more about that. How do you think you should move forward? And now we pray. Because you already know. There's something magical about having someone hold the space for you so that you can find what is already in your heart and your mind and your consciousness. But we don't tell you. We don't tell you what you should do or what you think or how you should feel or what the answer is. We just support so that you find it on your own because you know, you all already know. Isn't that neat? That means it's your responsibility. Isn't that irritating? And it's okay. It's okay. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that what's going on in your thoughts is not a given. We tend to, unfortunately, really believe our surface thoughts when we're like, well, if that person would just do this, then this would be better. Everything, they're the problem. Or that thing I did 20 years ago has dragged me down so far, there's no hope ever. I am the problem. Those thoughts, we do not have to believe them. We do not have to buy into them. How on earth do we get to the point where we know which thoughts are the problem? I would love to share with you this little thing that is a spiritual practice called self-reflection. I bet you've never heard of it. It's one of, in my little formula of the daily substantial spiritual practice, it's practice number 4. It's one of the 4. Self-reflection. It can look a lot of different ways. It can look like contemplative meditation. It can look like journaling. It can look like talking with a trusted advisor, like a minister, a practitioner, or a friend that's really steeped in wisdom. It can look like spending time in the silence and allowing the answer to rise up from within. The key is we have to do it. We have to spend time in self-reflection, or all of the wisdom just stays thinky thoughts. You know, the thinky thoughts, that intellectual mumbo-jumbo that is so interesting and keeps us buying books forever and a day. But if we don't do the self-reflection piece, it doesn't drop down into the inside of ourselves in such a way that it shows up differently in our thoughts and actions. So the practical step for mining your mind is self-reflection. Find a self-reflection practice that you like, that works for you, and really commit to it. Next up, now we know what's in there. Mines are kind of scary, right? Like if you think about going down into an underground mine, there are bats, and there are spiders, sometimes there are rats. Karen is loving this part of the message. Snakes. She really hates snakes. And I get it. It's a little bit unnerving to go into the mine of our mind, too, because there are bats in there. There are scary things in there. And yet, we need to, because what are the scary things in our mind? the self-saboteurs. We need to disarm the saboteurs that are living in our mind, whether they're the voice of our own expectations from back in the day, the voice of other people's expectations, the voice of what we think culture wants from us. There is a whole committee of critics just throwing a big old party somewhere in the back of our brain. And if we are still in the pattern of believing everything we think, oh my God, we're going to believe the critics. So notice, just like you would notice if you were going into a physical mine. You see the bats, you see the spiders. You don't walk without looking to see if there's a snake there. Pay attention for the inner criticism, the negative self-talk, the negative talk about others. Notice it. These are clues from the universe saying, ooh, here's a problem, here's a challenge, here's a thing that's keeping you stuck. Is it a sin? No, we don't really do that here. You're not going to get punished. You don't need to punish yourself. It's quicksand. It's the thing that's going to get you stuck. Was I the only one that thought I was going to need to worry a lot more about quicksand as an adult? From all the cartoons, I thought I was going to need to worry about quicksand and floors of lava. And none of that preparation actually helped me in real life, though I can jump from couch to couch beautifully. Notice, pay attention. Do what you can to release your judgments about yourself and anybody else. Because what it is releasing the idea that you get to decide what path leads home for them. Ooh, do we want anybody to do that to us? No. Oh, we do not like that. So we let go, we lay it down. Does that mean we have to agree with their choices? Nope. Does it mean we have to participate? Nope. Does it mean anything about us at all? Nope. Because their life is their life, and our life is ours. The third little tip our beloved Heather Cherry wrote into this article is if you can't swap the negative for the bright and shiny star in the sky, go for neutrality. No, it's not my business. It's not my business. It's not my business what somebody else is doing. And if I am struggling in my own self getting from the negative to the bright and shiny, you know what? It's a process. Go for the neutral. There is rich soil in the neutral. The practical step we can try for that is role play in your mind as a trusted friend. What would a wise, trusted friend say to you in these situations? Now, really pick a friend that doesn't like to get in on the gossip, right? Because that friend isn't going to help you in this case. When you're feeling stuck, what would Reverend Karen say? What would Reverend Lezli say? What would your practitioner say? What would Reverend Karen Russo say? How do the trusted, wise people in your life redirect? And let yourself use that language until the language is safe for you, is comfortable for you. Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind textbook said, you cannot heal anyone of their trouble if it's the result of some mental attitude they will not surrender. But I think it means more if we read it in the I cannot heal of my trouble if it's the result of some mental attitude which I will not surrender. Oh, breathe that in. I cannot heal if I will not surrender my judgments, my negative self-talk, my inner criticism. If I can't stop rallying my inner critics to go for somebody else's throat, I'm sticking the other foot in the quicksand. I'm staying where I'm at. But we want to make meaningful change, right? So how do we capitalize on those first two ways of playing with our mind and our heart to actually move forward into positive change? How do we choose positive change for ourselves? First, this comes from our friends at Abraham Hicks. Choose thoughts that feel good, even if it's only 1 micron better. My husband and I have a running I would say spiritual guidance session. He would say joke, inner joke. Both are true, where he says, so-and-so, usually, a work friend, so-and-so is being stupid. So-and-so is an idiot. They're just dummy heads, is what I would call it. They're just being dummy heads. And I respond with, I hear you saying that they use some unskilled behavior. Hear the difference? Is it untrue? No, that's usually what he's saying. They did or said something that didn't land right, hurt his feelings, caused a problem, right? But the difference between they're just an idiot and, ooh, there was some unskilled behavior happening. Do you hear the lack of judgment in the statement? It doesn't pretend like there isn't a thing that needs to be modified. It doesn't pretend like something didn't happen. But it takes the weight of they're a bad person or they did a bad thing out of it. They just use unskilled behavior. We can work with unskilled behavior, right? Little steps like that make a big difference over time. Work on, if you are a consumer of media, and good luck living in this modern culture if you're not, consume media that supports the positive expression of things, the positive interpretation of things. Think about what you're watching on television. Think about what you're doing with your social media. Be aware of it. It feeds your perspective. And utilize your spiritual knowledge to build this muscle. There can be a tendency, surely not in this congregation, I know, but in the world there can be a bit of a tendency to separate out spiritual stuff and the rest of life. And I do my spiritual stuff when I'm being spiritual, and then the rest of life is when I'm watching TV and going to work and doing my stuff. There's only one. We go back to the beginning of the talk. There's only one. If there's only one, there isn't this dichotomy of that which is spiritual and the rest of life. There's just life. And all of it is fed by our spiritual understanding. And the more often and the more completely we remind ourselves of our spiritual wholeness and our oneness with all beings, the easier it is to shift those thought perspectives. It's important that we be brave about letting ourselves be different because change is hard. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have lots and lots of talks that talk about it. Change is hard, but it's also inevitable, and we can use it for our good. I heard this story recently about an old woman, and she was very sad. She worried all the time about her two daughters. One daughter was married to an umbrella vendor, and the other daughter was married to a noodle maker. And when it was sunny, she would cry and cry and cry because no one was going to buy umbrellas and they were all going to starve. And if it was rainy, she would cry and cry and cry because noodles can't dry in the rain. And they were all going to starve. And the daughters were they didn't know what to do. She just cried she did nothing but worry and cry all the time. And so they went to their friend, the monk, and they said, you've got to help us with Mom. This is not going well. So he came and he spoke with her and he let her get her feelings out. And then he said, okay, I think we need to flip the perspective. I want you to do the exact opposite of what you've always been doing. And she said, I need to cry for noodles when it's dry, and I need to cry for umbrellas when it's raining. That doesn't make sense. And he said, you're right. It doesn't make sense. No. When it's sunny, I want you to think about those noodles and celebrate the drying of the noodles and the abundance that is coming and everyone who will get to eat those noodles. And when it is rainy, I want you to celebrate the umbrellas and all of the people that will be protected from the rain and all of the sales that will come and all of the abundance for everyone. And it changed everything. Little changes make big impacts in our lives. I call this practical step affirmations into action. Action doesn't always mean out there in the world stepping. The first step of action is the conscious choice to shift our thoughts. That is an action. Those first two steps give us the affirmations, the positive approach that will shift it for us. But we have to decide to every day make the shift in thought. And when we do, the shift in behavior becomes natural. You notice the monk didn't tell her not to cry. He just told her to think about the positives, and the crying stopped. We have that power too. So this is the invitation this week, to actively choose to take the steps in here so that we can see the changes out there. Are you with me? Beautiful. Let's take this into prayer. There is only one power, one presence, one life, one divinity, one consciousness, and it is in and through and of all things. Everything that ever has been created or ever will be created is of this oneness, and it is perfect. It is all love, all peace, all abundance, all grace, all givingness of life to its own creation. I know that I am one in this one. I know that everyone within the sound of my voice is one in this one. And so each one is already imbued with all of these powerful divine qualities of wholeness and beauty, of abundance and love. What would love do? Love would choose to think loving thoughts. What would wholeness do? It would choose to claim its oneness with all things. How good it is to know that this one that we call spirit is active in and through and as each beloved, right here, right now, healing what there is to heal, opening each of us up to our next great adventure, allowing to fall away anything that might keep us stuck in that quagmire, expanding our hearts and opening our minds. So grateful I am to know this truth for each of us, as each of us, whole, perfect, and complete, exactly as we are. So I release this word into the action of universal law and call it good and very good as we claim it together, saying, and so it is.